So I was taking Blend Flip 2. We were building online content. So I worked with an English 9 teacher, and we looked at how we could blend and flip the research speech unit. It's a unit that we've been teaching for a long time, and we've been teaching it. We tweak it, but it hasn't been really revamped. But it's something that is always a struggle for students, especially works cited. It's like a nightmare to teach freshmen. And so I worked with her on building that unit as a blended unit. My whole goal was to use some online instruction so that we could move some things out of like the regular class instruction, not maybe lecture delivery, but we used like a guru module that taught about paraphrasing in a far more interesting way than I had ever done it before. We also really, like the thing I loved about Blend Flip was rethinking how you teach things and why you teach it that way. And I don't know why it never occurred to me before, but I was like, why do we just grade one works cited page? Like we would never grade their first essay. Ever. We would always have a rough draft. They would always have feedback on their essay. But yet, when we do this works cited page, we walk them through it, we give them tutorials, and then we say, okay, turn in your best shot, and we're going to grade it. That's terrible teaching. So we decided that was one thing that we could do, is we could sort of build in a draft of that. We could kind of rearrange the order of how we teach the unit so they were really actually focused on the works cited page when it was time to do it, instead of thinking about their speech, which consumes them far more because they're nervous about it. And so we built in this time while they were working on Guru to learn about paraphrasing. Then we could be meeting with them individually on their works cited page and giving them individual feedback, which then drastically improved their ultimate product. So the blended unit that we did last year in that classroom, I think the big difference you would see if you walked in is that some students were working independently on their computer, where other students were maybe working as a small group, doing some brainstorming or getting feedback on work that they were working on. And then there was also, the thing I love about blended learning is if you move some of that stuff online, even in an in-class environment, the teacher has a lot more ability to sort of float and differentiate and meet with students and address their individual needs. Before you have technology, then there's a lot more like whole class instruction, and you're trying to get all of this information to these kids and help them practice, but some kids need more practice. Some kids are good to go and they're ready to start moving forward, but it's hard to know who those kids are. So the blended environment at least in our freshmen, I don't think there's a vision that we would use some kind of flex model where kids could actually like leave and be gone, because our freshmen, first of all, there are maturity issues and they don't have transportation, but you can still have a face-to-face class where kids are doing what they need to do for their own learning and sort of building in some self-paced, personalized aspects of learning, even though they're still in the same space. But it looks a little different because not everyone's always doing the same things. We usually started every class together as a whole group, giving an idea of what their tasks for the day were, what their goals or their learning objectives were. But then after that, they sort of split off and were doing lots of different things. The kids really seemed to be pretty engaged in that. They enjoyed the flexibility of choosing how they completed their tasks for the day and in what order they did. So some of them liked to work on the guru, but some of them would lose interest after a little while. And so then they would switch over and they were able to work on, researching their topic for their speech. And then applying some of those paraphrasing or citing skills that they had just looked at. So the flexibility and the choice, I think, is always key in engagement. And that was I think, a big benefit of blending that unit.
Cool.
So actually, the whole thing was really interesting because as a coach, then I got to do some data comparisons. And what I found is that on the works cited, which is the notoriously awful part of the unit, in the blended, 73% of the kids who went through the blended module got an A or a B on their works cited page, and only 38% in the traditional route did. So I felt that was really significant. And the paraphrasing, 100% of the kids who completed the actual exercise passed, which was also something that wasn't typical, at least in my experience. So I felt really good about that blended experience. And then their speeches were good because we actually built in an online, they recorded themselves as a practice of their speech. And then we did a discussion thread where we put them into small groups and they gave each other feedback. So it was almost like a rough draft of their speech as well. And what we found is that a lot of kids would wait until the last minute to do their speech because they were nervous about it. And so they'd show up on the day they were supposed to give their speech and they would maybe have never even talked through it before. Because they felt dumb, like talking to themselves or practicing even at home. But as soon as you gave them this assignment to record it, and then they not only shared it with other people and got feedback, but then they watched 2 other kids' practice speech and they got ideas about different ways they could organize or different ways they could use visuals. And so then their end result was way better than it might have been without that extra practice.